Like New Coke.
I don't drink Coke.
I think we're on. We got a floodlight failure. That's why we're there. Honest. You can turn the lights on now, fella.
Yeah, Phil's hiding in
These
the
are our
shadows.
These are our grey day lights.
Oh.
Oh no!
Wow. That's bright.
Quick, turn them off again. Oh. That's good. And anyway, loads of people have been watching. So thanks to all the people who've been chatting for the last 23 minutes.
It's like the old
Definitely my
BBC Two
fault.
floodlit trophy.
But it's nothing to do with lack of Tim Tams, John. That was
No, yeah, that was Phil. You've thrown a diva strop in. Sorry, Carson. The gay pride flags in there. Let me move that. I can't see you.
Calm down, Trump.
Go.
Bloody set dressing. I'll just leave it there. She's in front of me, is it? Danica's not here. She's on holiday. I can't believe it. Is she working? Is she working?
No, she's in Athens. She leaves today, I think.
So Carson's disappointed, but she'll be back on. We did see her on Saturday when I was hanging around trying to interview women after the game. So she's coming.
With or without shorts, Richard?
No, I was definitely wearing shorts.
You need to explain that, otherwise
I was definitely wearing
dodgy.
No, I was definitely wearing shorts. Paige
No,
Travis
with the women wearing shorts.
No, Paige Travis. She'd given them away. Given away to someone in the crowd. Well, no one ever asks referees for selfies or shirts, do they? Oh, he's eating. Sorry. Nobody asks members of the media for a pen. Oh no, they do.
Oh, they do. Yeah, all the time.
Team sheets.
Other members of the media.
The team sheet people.
I was once asked for my cards from a fan in Toronto who'd driven about 3 hours to watch the game.
Wow.
And then demanded to see me before the game. Very politely, though. And asked if I could have my cards after the match. I said, no, I need them next week.
I may well do this when I get
Nicholas?
next week.
Was it Nicholas Mew?
No. They often came in very useful, so, yeah. I've been lost without them.
Oh, we've got loads of questions now. Anyway, welcome. Carson's been to Wales.
When?
The weather was Welsh. What's that mean?
Rain and sheep.
Was it all vowels? No, all consonants, no vowels, that's it.
Lots of L's.
Andrew says, evening all. Welcome to the podcast, by the way. Evening all. After the England internationals, do we finally have a realistic chance of beating the Australians?
No.
I disagree with that.
It was too inches.
Said the Australian.
I think they've got a very good chance.
Eating a World Cup win.
No, I think they do. I mean,
I
You
think
don't
they've
have to butter up Sean Wayne now. He's not here. He's not here.
They've got a really
that's
good.
hardly.
I think they've got a really good chance of winning one of the three tests. I don't know if they've got. I don't know if they've got enough to win a series.
But that's what you have to win one game to be
Yes.
able, and I think they'll be very competitive. I think if you look at that team now, you've got Herbie Farnworth, who's easily one of the best centres in the world.
Yeah. And you've got Jake Wardle to come in, who's not
a
far
fantastic player. Harry Newman, a lot of potential, great player.
Well, the great thing is you've got competition, haven't you? So
but apart from Herbie, you've got a lot of players in the NRL. You've got Dom Young, who's just a unique, massive human. You've got other players who are playing in the NRL. Your Smithies.
We've had for the last few years, even going back to the 2017 World Cup, a really good pack that can match it with the Aussies. We've got some really potent outside backs, and again, competition for places in all the three-quarter positions. Where we've lacked in the past is the half-backs that can create. You're not going to get many chances in a game, so you've got to be so good that when they come along, you can take them. And we haven't had half-backs that can do that. Do we now with Harry Smith?
That was my point. Well, George Williams is a fantastic player, has played in the NRL, did very well. Harry Smith, is a fantastic player, and you've got Michael Lewis. There is actually depth across, and I think with a lot of those players, with Smith and Wardle, Wellesby, Matty Lees, if they might not have played in the NRL, but they've beaten NRL teams in the World Cup, so there's not that fear factor there anymore. So I think when you put that all together, and they've been like the unity seems to be very strong. Like they're a very together group. While Australia, I know they're missing a few players at the moment, but they're kind of bringing in a bit of a new generation. I think England on home turf as well. With the home crowd behind them, I think they're a genuine chance.
So there you go. That's the answer to that one, Andy. Or Andrew. Don't want to get your name wrong. What do we make of the whole series then as exciting 2-game events at Wigan and Head? Because I've got is the test match we're going to win against the Australians at Wigan? Or Wigan? That's the big question. Have you found the report yet saying the 3 grounds that are going to hold the the Ashes series next year yet?
Well, no one knows because
All the journalists know. All the journalists
They
know.
haven't actually announced the series yet.
Yeah, exactly.
What?
Like,
Hang on.
I don't think it's officially been. So
Where's Yorkshire, Lancashire? Oh, hang on.
I mean, there's lots of factors going in the fact that the majority of the stadiums in the country, Rugby League doesn't control, so it'll determine who's playing there and what football teams are.
If we take it back a step, though, what is the implication behind this series may well be played over here rather than in Australia?
I think that's quite obvious.
Who's made the decision?
The NRL.
And what is the thinking behind it? Because it's almost like fattening up a turkey for Christmas.
Yeah.
So I think more than saying where will the venues be, can England win the series? That's all great. But why all of a sudden this complete volte-face that means the Aussies may be coming here when the calendar we were given by the IRL was we were going there, and all of the reaction to the back of that was it's great we're going there because it gives us the perfect preparation for a World Cup. Have we now got to the stage, possibly a rhetorical question but worth asking, where the NRL have decided under Peter V'landys and Andrew Abdo that expansion is not only on the agenda, but they have realised that the Northern Hemisphere Rugby League needs propping up. So number one, you can have an element of Vegas. You might make some money out of that, not necessarily in year one, but you're obviously going to increase your profile. You might get a television deal out of it. You might get corporate sponsors coming on board. But obviously, if we're going to play England home or away, we've got to have a strong competition that England are in. We may need to take some vested interest in that competition. So instead of us expecting you to pay to come out here, we're going to come to you so that you can generate some money so that we can then pick it off and take what we want. Is that
I think there's
behind all
I think
of
that's part of it. I think there's two parts. I think the fact that the World Cup in France fell over and it's now being hosted in Australia means there's a vacancy in this market, and the fact that why would we have an Ashes series and then a World Cup in Australia? Because, well, you could argue whether the market needs that or whether the NRL or the ARLC actually needs the revenue.
But we were also told that the Aussies don't travel a year before a World Cup. But clearly they are prepared to travel if there's an economic imperative.
When was that decision taken for the Aussies to host it? Was that at the point that France was hosting the World Cup?
Yes, that was... Because obviously I think they were coming in 2020, and Mal Meninga, whenever you see him interview, you ask him, loves the UK, loved his time at St Helens, loves kangaroo tours. I think he went on 4 of them more than anyone else. Yeah. Adrian Lamb is obviously the lead coach, his assistant. I think, and you talk to the actual Australian players, they enjoy... Yeah, well...
coached over here and loved it over here.
But they enjoy coming on tour. And I think the other part of that is, as Phil said, this market is struggling. The ARFL doesn't have any money. The only reason Samoa came over was because the NRL was paying for half of their... Which has never been mentioned or talked about much, but they realise that they need this market to be strong. They need to give it a boost, and this would give it a major boost.
They wouldn't do it just for altruistic stuff.
No, they'll be getting paid well to come over. Yeah.
But are they priming themselves for greater involvement in...
Quite possibly, yeah.
Because the one thing about the Pacific Championships, which is obviously the last... I think we can say the season is actually finished after this one.
After Sunday?
Yes.
Pre-season training has already started at Hull, so we're already into next year already.
The Pacific Championships have been a success if you measure it by attendances, TV ratings, reaction from the players who are always
Tongan hymns.
All of that would indicate that they're suddenly starting to realise that there's a finite market in the club game. They will expand it, but within the realms of 20 will be the maximum number of teams they'll have, and there's been a slight delay because obviously the bids that have come in haven't met expectation. So they're looking at the American market, clearly TV betting, not necessarily to put a domestic league in America. They're looking at the market that exists in the Northern Hemisphere but is at the moment at one of its lowest ever ebbs in terms of finance. I think there's a lot more to this with the Kangaroo Tour switching at short notice than just, what venues are we going to play at? I think it's a much more fundamental discussion about where is the game going.
That doesn't get clicks though, like saying, we're going to play them in Wigan. So, Well, before I forget, because you mentioned Tongan hymns, it was mentioned by the Samoa coach Ben Gardner in his press conference after the game. What did happen between Sunday in Wigan and Saturday in Leeds regarding the Civetao? Because something changed, didn't it? Something changed fundamentally, because he alluded to it, but no one asked him.
Well, I wrote about it, Rich. Obviously, you're not.
I don't read.
Not paying attention. You don't read. Can you read?
From Wakefield.
No, I think
a new supermarket opened up in Wakefield yesterday, and people queued up at 4 a.m. So this is what's going on.
I think the understanding is what my understanding is in the Pacific Championships, and I think this is the same in rugby union generally. There is a rule that the team doing a war dance stands on the 40 metre and the other team stands on their 40 metre. Now that is because in the past there has been instances where people have advanced on a haka or a war dance, whichever it may be, and things have kind of gone awry. Like I think 2011 was France and New Zealand in the Rugby Union World Cup final. France advanced on it, they were fined. So I think Samoa did not expect England to stand on the 50 metre line, and actually if you watch the footage I think Herbie Farmer was technically over it. But
or was it Sam Tompkins?
No, it was Sam. Well, as Steve Mascord wrote for NRL.com last week, it was Sam Tompkins' instruction. And you could say maybe
that's what he was there for.
Maybe it worked. I don't know. I mean, you could argue that Samoa were a bit flat in the first test, or just a bit slow or a bit reduced energy. I don't know, but yeah, I think in the second week it was probably thought we'll start a bit deeper because we don't. Which you could say is a bit of a shame because they were great moments, and Michael Lewis and Gordon.
Oh, mates, aren't they?
Yeah,
best
mates. Yeah, BFFs.
Oh. It amused me because obviously last week there was all the nonsense from that Burke who plays rugby union about the hacker. And then when I saw the clips on the news, because they showed that because that was the highlight of last week's England versus the All Blacks game, between England and the All Blacks were a row of photographers. So we're going to run over the photographers.
In the Pacific Championship, it's a row of microphones, isn't it? So you can
hear. Yeah.
I suspect that somebody sat down in the Samoa camp and said, it might have been a great look media-wise to have them forehead to forehead, but it's detracting from what we're actually doing, the tradition that we're serving and the message that we're putting out and the respect that we're trying to garner about our heritage. So I think we'll take a step back and at least we'll complete it and be able to show to the crowd that the crowd joined in at Headingley. It was absolutely fantastic. I think slightly
there was
more
a few people booing and carrying on, but yeah.
But there were, all of the hooping and the hollering that goes with it was absolutely fantastic, and you can't get that if they end up together and it becomes quite an aggressive action rather than, well, it's an aggressive action anyway, but if it ends with people potentially being
it's not really meant to be that aggressive though. Like it is a war dance, but it's
throwing down a challenge.
Yeah, but it's going back. It's representing their forefathers and their family.
But you can't do that if it ends up forehead to forehead, and all the news is about who's going to get disciplined before the game's kicked off.
It's a great thing. I think we all like it, don't we?
I love it.
Yeah, 100%. It's passion. It's history, it's heritage.
So you haven't told us where you're going to play the 3 tests now.
Oh dear! I just wondered whether it was more to do with. It could be. It could quite be. I wondered whether it was more to do with they performed better in the Civetao than they did in the game.
Yes, I think they invested a hell of a lot of emotion in the first one.
I think that's a bit of a cop out, personally. Yeah.
Ben Gardner did say post the first game and in the lead up to the second game that one of the things that had let them down was their start to the game. And you do wonder if it's not the emotion that you invest in the Civetao, it's the fact that it takes emotion out of you and it ends up very confrontational. So we'll do it in our space. We know what it means to us. It'll fire us up for the start of the game, and we won't get distracted by the fact that we brought the crowd into it and they're booing us or whatever it might be, or the photographers are. And before the game's even 5 minutes old, social media's full of clips that have got nothing to do with the game.
But people forget that they had 9 debutants. Like, they basically brought a new, squad. They're looking long term. I'm sure they would have liked to have won both of those games, but you can't necessarily expect them to hit ground running.
They weren't a million miles away at Headingley. The sin binning was
what I'd asked James, because that was probably the main talking point, and obviously Ben Gardner.
I did see the first half.
Not that you would like to throw a referee under the bus, but
I think one of the things that in the game one, they were probably lucky, in my view, to not have somebody sin-binned for repeat offences in the ruck, and frankly, Liam was probably far more patient than I would have been. So whether there was an element of that in that you ended up having repeat offences, but this time it was for a different offence, which was foul play. And I suppose what you couldn't say was that Chris didn't warn them. And so it wasn't for that one particular incident, and he made that quite clear, and it was a number of offences. Yeah. For me, I suppose in some senses, it perhaps, because of the drop in height, it probably wasn't the best one to select from. But ultimately, you couldn't deny that there was a series of foul play offences, and how many more penalties do you keep giving in a short space of time for repeat infringement? So I don't think they could really have a complaint in that regard. And in fact, it was interesting to listen to the halftime discussion, because I didn't really watch much of the second half around, was it Jamie Peacock and, I'm trying to remember who was on at halftime, Kevin Brown, I think maybe.
It was Kevin Brown, yeah.
Saying that they were, in their opinion, they thought he was lucky it was even a yellow card and not even a red. Well, it wouldn't have been a red in Super League because of the drop in height for mitigation. In Super League in isolation, that probably was a sin bin.
And funny thing was, in the actual commentary, I think it was Brian Noble and Robbie Hunter-Bull,
yeah.
And they were surprised when he was yellow card, and I think that probably goes back to
Brian has yellow card aversion. He wants 13 people on the field.
But what is head contact and what is a sin bin in the NRL, where all the vast majority of the Samoans players play, and what is in Super League is different, isn't it? As a referee, you know that.
In isolation, that international level is not a sin bin, in my opinion. In
so
Super
you think
League,
it was cumulative?
Well, it was.
He did say that, yeah.
He said that
the ref
on
said
the
that,
comms, so there's absolutely no doubt about that's why he went to the sin bin. He went because it was cumulative, and I've no problem with that.
There was no big.
No, that's long since gone. No, and there was lots of, because I was listening when I listened to a game. I was listening more than watching, actually, because I was doing something at the same time, working, but. I'd almost switch off to the commentary, and I'm just listening out for what the referee's saying. And so I can hear him at dropouts and scrums, basically sort of repeating that message about foul play, and obviously every time he's giving a penalty for foul play. So they could be left in no doubt that that's where they ended up. So I actually don't think they've got a complaint. But yeah, you're right. In isolation, for me, at international level, it's not a sin bin.
I think the other thing that's interesting, going back to something that Martin Coyd said last week, when he was possibly only half jokingly talking about miking up referees for wheelchair Super League if it happens, is that if you're in the ground, you're at a disadvantage to listening on the television. So because you can hear that this is cumulative and it's building up and it may end up with a sin bin, and therefore it's not controversial. In the ground, without that big Catherine wheel gesture, we don't know what's happening.
But the reason that signal was brought in years ago, which was a Stuart Cummins initiative, was to stop teams that were deliberately conceding on the goal line, which were penalties in those days, to then deliberately have the referee stop the game, to bring a captain out when everybody knows what's being said. So it was to counteract teams that were deliberately doing that, and once the referee then gave the warning, they backed away. So to keep the game flowing, they issued a signal. So there was a logic to it, and that just sort of disappeared, really. So I kind of take your point, but it also should leave some discretion for the referee. To once you then gave the signal when we had it, you were backed into a corner in some ways that everybody knows what you've just done, so that you had very little discretion.
Although without checking the penalty count, I think he'd only given about 3 up to that.
It wasn't many, yeah.
So it might have been cumulative.
I think that was the 4th and all for foul play, and I think they were quite lucky in some ways.
So at what point does it become cumulative?
And that's the discretion of the referee, that it's cumulative in that a series of offences have occurred in a relatively short space of time. Now that might have been 20-25 minutes.
Just over 20
But they
minutes.
were probably lucky that the first penalty of the game, I think it was the first, was the late hit into the back. That was probably lucky that in isolation was not a sin bin.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I think the Bateman one was a 50-50. But the Radley one, you've seen them being sin bin. So
and I don't watch the NRL closely enough to know whether that. I suspect that wouldn't have been 10 minutes in the NRL. But
sometimes
you watch it more than me.
Sometimes
they tend to use on the report a lot.
They are protecting halfbacks.
Yes, but they do. You are right. They tend to put on report and not necessarily go for a card. But I think, for me, they were 50-50 calls. But the sad thing was that Samoa kind of caved in, and then 3 tries. It was
The
almost
thing is,
game over
I think
at
you look at that
half-time.
the other way, though. I think the ruthlessness of England,
Oh yeah, definitely.
which we haven't always seen in the past, to exploit the
They
extra
did.
man,
Yeah.
was fantastic.
It was,
Because
yeah.
so many times when a team goes down to 12 men and they're perhaps concertina their defence, they ride out that 10 minutes.
At that level, though, with the best players in the world, you should be able to
But
exploit
that's
that.
what was impressive, I think,
Yeah.
about England, that they did exploit it. They did win the game effectively in that 10 minutes.
But then you go back to the week before, no one was sin bin, and still England were convincing and dominant. So
but Samoa were better.
They
I
were.
thought, in the,
Yes.
for the 70 minutes they had.
I think they were better
The full
in
complement.
the second.
They were better,
The second week. I think.
Which they were always going to be better by virtue of the fact that they
Yeah.
were attuned to the conditions. And
I think Anthony Milford being replaced by Blaise Tonga was also a good call, because I think Milford was quite a liability in the first game.
But he wants a contract over here.
Well, people keep. I mean, irresponsible journalists keep putting him in as NRL star. He's been playing in the Queensland Cup.
Is he a gun?
Yeah,
Is he a gun?
He
It
played,
wasn't
That's
gun
not
about.
what-
It
that's
wasn't
not
gun about 8 years ago.
So this gun stuff.
he
Yeah.
played in the Interstate Challenge, didn't he? Before the Grand
I think
Final.
was he playing for the Capras
No, he was,
or the
playing,
Burleigh Bears? Yeah.
he was playing for the Dolphins.
No, he's not playing for the Dolphins. That's the whole point, Phil.
Or was it North Devils? I can't remember.
Yeah, but one of the
It
feeder
was somebody.
teams.
I
yeah,
think it was
but,
North
yeah,
Devils were in the
but
final, and I'm sure.
There's a reason he's not playing in the NRL, and that's because he's not good enough. Yeah.
So we'll wait about 2 weeks before he's announced by Lee then. So,
Probably Featherstone. Yeah.
or Featherstone, yeah.
But he might want to get paid, so that might not
Featherstone
be a
melts.
good
Oh,
idea.
don't upset Featherstone. Don't upset Featherstone.
Stop me not paying players.
Anything else
That
to say
was the
about?
old regime.
Yeah.
Oh, right,
It's,
okay.
new, it's all new now, yeah.
All forgiven, forgotten.
Yeah. Anything else happened in the game that we need to talk about? Apart from we've already said Herbie
think-
Farnworth's brilliant.
He's amazing.
He's the best, isn't he?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
he still
I
he
think
doesn't sound
the
Australian.
only. If I was
doesn't,
Harry
does it?
Smith, I'd be really annoyed about how good Herbie Farnworth was.
He's a big game
Because-
player, Harry Smith, isn't he?
Harry Smith over these 2 games, I think the opinion
It's been very good.
the opinion of him has changed because he's always been in a team where kick us out of trouble. You're a one-dimensional player. You've got a great kicking game. That's all you can do. I think over the course of these 2 matches, he has put himself forward as being a leading halfback at international level, and he would have been man of the match if it hadn't.
Yeah.
Been, if Farnworth had not been so brilliant. I also think that Jerome Luai was magnificent in this series. Because it would have been very easy for him, having won 4 grand finals, moving to West Tigers, which, big deal.
what's the State of Origin film, in case you forgot it?
No, but I mean, it's got to the end of the season where he's invested all that energy
Yes.
into the final game he's had with Penrith.
Yeah,
he
his
wants to
hometown
go
club.
out as a winner.
Yeah.
4 in a row anyway takes a huge amount of energy and motivation out of you. To then say, I'm going to come on tour as captain, and not stay at home and prepare for moving to another club, which would have been very easy for him to do, and to play the way he did. I thought it was a real honour and a privilege to watch him, and I thought Roger Tuivasa-Sheck was magnificent as well, particularly in the second game.
So if England are going to beat Australia, is that the team to beat Australia? I mean, you watch both
'cause
games in more
John,
detail.
John Bateman won't be in it, but I
But it
understand
will
why.
because Sean Wayne likes him.
No, I
depending
understand
on
why
that-
he was in
that
the
edge.
squad, and I understand why Chris Hill was in the squad and didn't play, because there's that moving out of the team that you've got into the new ones that you want to bring in and having some continuity. And he always talks about standards, and he wants people in there that know the standard. So I think not everybody who would play in this particular series will be in
I've seen
necessarily.
many changes, though.
No, there won't be many,
I mean,
but I can
yeah.
see a couple.
Yeah, I
and
think
I
slight
can see
tweaks,
some players who, it'd be very interesting to see how Lewis Dodd does in his first season in the NRL. There's going to be players that the
He's
pool
never
is
played for England.
no, but if he starts dominating at South Sydney,
Yeah, I don't think
surprised.
I don't think.
but why have they
that's-
signed him then? Because they obviously think he can.
Yeah, that's a good. I think he's a good player. I think he's had a
But I think
tough year.
Sean Wayne, Lee Breers, Andy Last will be looking at all of those players that are playing in the NRL. And Morgan Smithies didn't play in this series. And another year at Canberra, he may well be coming in instead of John Bateman. There is a similarity in the way that
I
they
don't
play.
think you change that Smith and Williams axis. I think they work very well
No,
together.
but I think the more competition you've got for
Oh,
those
for places
positions
is great. I think where England needs competition is probably fullback. I think Jack Wellesby was fairly quiet. I mean, probably didn't have a great season. Obviously a class player, but there's not really a backup for him. There wasn't one named. Apart from that, there's depth, I think, in a lot of positions. I mean, at hooker, do you see Danny Walker or Cruz Leeming, or Cheslin?
Brad O'Neill.
Brad O'Neill, obviously, but he's coming back from an ACL, so...
Yeah, but if we're talking longer term, World Cup...
But by the time... Yeah, I was talking more for the Ashes, but yeah, I think that's a pretty settled squad. And there is depth across most of the positions, and that's... Because there will be injuries or people are out of form in a year's time. But
I mean, Sean Wayne won't take a long term view. He'll just take the view of the Ashes. I mean, to win an Ashes series would be some mighty effort. So yeah, there's
greatest honourable career. You don't sound like that.
Well, I think even will be 19 years since Great Britain or England has beaten Australia. So even just one
2006 was it?
Yeah.
I was on the line. Yeah.
Were you in Sydney?
I was on the line for that game. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, in fact, should have been somebody sent off for in that game.
I was going to say, really? How did Willie Mason stay on the field?
Well, yeah, I was a far side touch judge, so I was covering the back play there.
Different era.
It was a different era.
Get a punch in.
So your elbow was allowed to...
Tim Mander was video ref, and the...
Who was the actual ref?
Ashley Klein.
Right.
Yeah, Ben.
Who's now the greatest ref in the world.
Yeah, and Ben Cummins was on the other line.
So how did they miss the Sean Long?
We didn't miss it.
On report.
Yeah. So the Tim Mander described the Willie Mason punch as an overreaction. So
was that the one on Stuart Fielding?
So that was the one on Fielding. So
but he did literally elbow.
And then about 5 minutes later, he then cleared Long out to the face, and I said to Ash, Ash, I'm coming on. No. If you know Ash, no. That's what he's like. Anyway, there was a penalty, and obviously replays and all that carry on. But really, he should have been set off twice in that game. He smashed his jaw, I think, on that.
He ended the mystique of Stuart Fielding in that one moment.
That was it. Did Stuart Fielding ever recover from that moment?
Not when he came on the podcast when we were on Radio Yorkshire.
Because it's weird though. You look back at those eras and you'd say the Adrian Morley, Robbie Kearns stiff arm, which was the right call. Yeah. But a lot of people kind of outraged it happened because when you can compare it to like the Willie Mason thing, you would say, well, why wasn't it? Yeah.
Should have been. And that's where the argument about 13 versus 13 comes back.
But wasn't it also Jamie Peacock metering out retribution at the time? It's like an eye for an eye.
Well, there is ways you can legally do it, isn't there?
I mean, it was a great game, and that was the first test, I think. It was a Four Nations, Tri-Nations series, that was. But that was the first time that they played them. And they always seem to me to favour that first test, England or Great Britain, don't they? So,
well, from what I've read about it,
so where would you have the first game?
Elland Road, just
to
wind up
somewhere really intimidating.
I just want to see Twitter go off into meltdown.
Well, I think the problem with that back in 2006, what I read is they went back to, I think it was the Manly Pacific, or they were staying somewhere in Manly and partied, and Gareth Hock had several women in his bed, and then they continued partying on the plane, and then Sean Long got sent. So you don't party like you've won the series after the first test.
It's funny. I came back on the flight at the end of the tournament with Martin Gleeson, and he said to me, and we landed, and he's like, "Oh, I'm glad that's over." I said, "What, the flight?" He said, "No, the trip." I was like, "Oh, okay," because I think he ended up in bother as well on that trip.
I think him and Leon Price were also.
Did anyone not end up in bother? Was anyone having?
And that's the now Bradford coach that was leading that.
Yes.
That
4020 magazine columnist Brian Noble.
And the Warrington assistant coach. But it is crazy to think that you've got the chance to make history and you perhaps go a little.
But we weren't used to it. We weren't used to what you do after you've won a big game.
And
looking at a schedule and going.
No team's invincible. No. Anyone can be beaten. I think that's history proves that.
Are Tonga going to win on Sunday?
It's possible. Well, I was there in 2019 when they beat the Kangaroos. I didn't think they would that day, and that was amazing. That was at Eden Park. That was historic. So I think anything is possible. I think they've got a good chance. That game on Saturday.
Oh, the New Zealand Tonga game.
Yes, I remember speaking to Phil about it. I had a sleep in, so I saw it from out. That was an amazing half, though.
That was just.
I mean, the atmosphere was with the hymns and everything. It was just carried over through the TV, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, the drama on the field
was great.
Was Tonga 24-0 up. New Zealand scored just before half time, and the commentators are doing that. Oh, there's a lifeline. And you go, no, there isn't. And
We're turning over.
The next thing, it's 24-all.
Yeah.
And New Zealand are playing the way you love to watch New Zealand play. It's almost like Sean Johnson's instigated touch football.
Well, Peter Hiku was pretty
Hiku's
crucial, yeah.
Then it gets to, we're in drop goal territory. And it's 25-24 to Tonga because they pulled off this brilliant drop goal. And you think, well, that's it. New Zealand then get a penalty 40 metres out and miss it. And then the commentators start telling you there's no golden point, there's no extra time, it's all on count back. New Zealand just need a draw, they'll go through. They have 2 drop goal attempts and miss them, and you're actually on the edge of your seat. While all of that's happening, in the background, the Tongan fans are singing hymns. It's a sellout anyway, so the New Zealand fans who have been really quiet are really getting up for it. It was just the most amazing sporting 40 minutes.
I don't know how New Zealand didn't win with the 2 drop goals at the end. Sean Johnson.
One was charged down, wasn't it? And then the second one, Osaka
well, yeah, it was, but he complained and said his legs were clipped, which he wasn't. But then Osaka literally had no one
No.
Yeah, it was crazy, but I mean, it was a sad way for Sean Johnson's rugby league career.
He's got one more game.
Yeah, he's got the big relegation game, yeah.
Against PNG.
I mean, it's not the same.
But I think that there were 2 things that struck me.
But
One
congrats to Tonga.
By adding an element to the men's and the women's, wherein there's a promotion relegation element.
I'll never catch on that.
Is this like Swinton against?
No, there's actually meaning.
Oh, there'll be medals.
There's meaning behind this.
Don't you mention the medals, people get upset.
But also, obviously, in the women's one, they've had World Cup qualification attached to it as well. So you end up with 4 games in one venue that, funnily enough, are sold out. And there's something riding on every game. So the institution of that is brilliant.
Well, I think whether something was right in the game itself, I think what was nice, only seeing it on Instagram, but was Lachlan Lamb captaining PNG and, you know, that interaction with his father did the same. Yeah, very proud moment for the Lamb family.
Well, I wouldn't rule them out playing New Zealand in this promotion relegation.
Well, New Zealand have been a bit ordinary. I mean, I don't know why Charles Nicol-Clodstack is playing 6 when he's a fullback or a centre. I think that experiment's failed.
Kinney, who's been at fullback.
Oh, he's a fantastic player. Yeah.
Revelation.
If you haven't seen him play for Gold Coast, he's a star of the future. But Clodstack's not a 5'8".
The other thing it's allowed, which historical perspective I think is really important, is we've all suddenly gone back to 2017 and the transfer to become a heritage player for Jason Taumalola. So we're now 7 years on from that. And he's got to the final, so he's going to lead his team out against Australia to win a Pacific Championship, which they may or may not do. But everybody is now saying that moment in International Rugby League has proved to be absolutely seminal. And whilst he's got some credit from people that love International Rugby League, I think the fact that people are now writing about how important it's been that he could so easily have just carried on getting picked.
Well, I think
for the key, he was good enough to play.
Oh, I think it's not just that; it's encouraging.
It needs one.
Yeah,
it's like a domino effect, and then 3 or 4 others start saying, "Oh, well, if you're going to do that, and it's going to be meaningful because you're doing it, we'll do it for Tonga." And then everybody starts saying, "Well, I'm of Samoan heritage, so I'm going to do it."
It's Jeremiah Nanai, who's a Queensland Origin player, won a World Cup with Australia, but then deciding to go. Both his parents are Samoan. Deciding to play for Samoa.
This raises another question, I think, which is moving off topic.
That's okay.
Like we do in this program.
All the time.
Back to Yorkshire, Lancashire, and how.
Well, it's not happening now, so it doesn't matter.
So what's the alternative?
Was it ever happening?
Well, when Sean Wynn said it on Saturday, and then
he's asked his opinion what he would like. He doesn't run the game.
So
neither does I.
Everybody agrees that we need a stepping stone from domestic competition to international competition.
Because Junior Nsemba, he was blowing out of his arse. That's what Sean Wayne said.
And in an ideal world, we would help France and we would look after France, but you've also got to have a product that people will go to and broadcasters want to.
There's a bit of hypocrisy there, Phil.
But
because everyone says the NRL Australia have got to do this and they've got to help the game. And they prop up New Zealand, they prop up Samoa, they prop up Fiji, they prop up PNG. But shouldn't the UK be propping up Wales and propping up France?
We haven't got any money.
We're British.
The difference is
we're exceptional.
We haven't. But So what else could we have to give Sean Wayne effectively a test trial?
Haven't we done? I feel like. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
No,
thought of it. I feel like I'm 80. We've been through all the different variations.
The answer's Ireland.
Exiles.
The answer is Heritage Island, which is how Tonga and Samoa have got up to the levels
About
of
the Celtic.
music.
The
No,
Celtic.
it-
Actual
2000 World
country.
Cup. You will have only been 3 at the time, I would imagine.
I was in the South Stand.
Yeah.
17.
England played Ireland in the quarter-final,
Since 2000.
2000.
Yeah. Brian Carney.
Almost 17,000 people there. An astonishingly strong Ireland team. Barry McDermott, Terry
The problem will be, Phil,
Steve
the
Prescott.
problem will be all the Australian Irishmen,
There were,
they won't be paid.
it was only Luke Ricketson, really.
No, there was Kevin Campion and there was
Yeah,
a few
but-
others.
but-
They were very good players.
But even without them,
Luke, well, I
that
suppose
was the
Luke Carey will
start
be in
of
France.
something. 2013 World Cup, we can never fill Huddersfield. England play Ireland in what was a meaningless game in terms of the fact that
Yeah,
you
it
knew
was
England
sellout.
were going to win it. 24,000 people.
Thierry
there.
refereed it.
So we've proved that we have a model that if we played it regularly enough, again, I'm not going to guarantee anything, but I guarantee that if you took that game to Dublin and called it Ireland against England, you would find a stadium that you could sell out. It might not be Croke Park to start with. You have to have 2 teams that are relatively competitive. So we keep picking Michael McAlorum and Toby King and all, but they played for Ireland. If we had the same kind of heritage that Taumalolo started when he moved from New Zealand to Tonga, with England and Ireland, and we actually kept with something, and the sugar to that
Say
was
that again?
we brought back Great Britain so that they weren't missing out on something, and that every 4 years the Irish players that were good enough would feed into Great Britain, so it genuinely was Great Britain and Ireland. You could take that game anywhere. You could take it to Bristol, you could take it to London, you could take it to Dublin or Cork but if we played that every year, we've got the equivalent if we actually allow our heritage players to play for a nation that you interviewed Ireland after the last World Cup, didn't you, Rich? Luke Keary was as passionate as anybody I interviewed at the last World Cup about what it meant for him to find his roots, to sing the songs, to go to Ireland, to trace the roots of his father and his grandfather. You say the Aussies wouldn't come if it's done in a window.
No, because someone's got to pay for them.
No, but if it was done in a window where they could come,
will be the end of the season.
They would come.
We've got the NRL money now because they're coming over for the Kiwi.
So
that's
the whole point of the Samoan tour, Phil. They're only there because the NRL's.
But what I'm saying is, if we want to do something that isn't Yorkshire, Lancashire, we actually did it in 2000 with England and Ireland, and we threw it away. We showed we could do it.
You could say the same with Wales in 1995, couldn't you?
But they were all. I think
Wales
John makes a fair point though, because they were all end of season tournaments. I think once you play a mid-season tournament, then you're not going to get the Aussie.
Well, you won't
Aussies
get.
coming
You won't get Victor Radley. You won't get Don Wrong. You won't get all those other
playing for
players.
State of Origin.
No, they won't be coming over.
Well,
The RFL doesn't have a pot to piss in.
no, but the NRL could.
They're not going to pay Victor Radley business flights to come and play for England in May. Because the Sydney Roosters would be like, no, sorry,
Well,
that's not going to happen.
I think if we're going to do something, let's do something like that rather than even talk about Yorkshire and Lancashire coming back.
It's not coming back though, so it's okay.
No, not
So
not
all
next
those
year.
articles that are saying who could coach the team? We had this the other week.
thing is,
Littler's going to coach them.
We've been through this how many times? How many times have we had reincarnations of these things?
But the Exiles doesn't work.
But the thing,
it didn't work. I remember Yorkshire, Lancashire. It didn't work.
It doesn't
the
work.
thing that I don't understand
But
though,
England, Ireland would work.
they changed the borders in '74. So
90.
what was Lancashire before? Like that's. Because you couldn't
That's
just
fine.
chop Queensland like at Cairns and then create a new like it doesn't.
Here's the Pennines, right? This
Yeah.
this box of cakes is the Pennines. That's Lancashire over there, and this side's Yorkshire.
So that's what it used to be.
Todmorden is in the middle.
So how can you have people who live in Merseyside with Merseyside accents?
Well,
and
Cheshire. Who does
and,
Mike McMeekin play for?
well, yeah, exactly. He's from London, but I think if you were going to use a state of origin style rule, it would be who you played your senior for.
Yeah.
So it would be
But I'm
Yorkshire because he played for Castleford. But
Unless-
all the people from Cumbria, like
Unless
Morgan Knowles.
Unless it's
as well.
Yorkshire against the rest.
I thought
of the
Morgan
world.
Knowles was Welsh.
You'd like that, wouldn't you?
Yorkshire against
Yeah.
anyone. We'll
Yeah.
take you all.
Yeah.
When are we going to break away?
Because it would mean something to play for Yorkshire.
The reality is, it always comes back to money. And the reason why, in my lifetime, Yorkshire and Lancashire didn't work, and why the Exiles didn't work, is because not enough people went to watch it.
Not enough people cared.
But
But
it goes back
didn't make money, lost money.
What we were talking about at the beginning is there is a body out there at the moment who has lots of money that wants to enhance what's happening in this side of the world to make it more competitive. I think a concept like an England-Ireland, they would underpin it.
It would work if it makes money.
It would make money because it's not part of the current television deal, so you could sell that as a different property.
I don't think the NRL's not going to do something like that where they're not going to directly benefit from it financially. So if they come for an Ashes tour, they will get a cut of...
100%.
Exactly. If they have a Origin game at Wembley, they'll probably get all the money. Do you know what I mean? They're not just going to throw 20 million into the UK market. No, I'm just using a hypothetical figure.
If they're putting
5 million,
a one-off test match, and it was profit related, so that over a certain amount of money that was bought in through ticket sales and broadcasting revenue, they got a little bit back. I think they would.
I think part of the problem, though, Phil, is it's not just a case of funding; it's also the knowledge and the expertise to market and sell a product.
Yeah, but
clearly the
RFL,
RFL,
you've got to have money to market. And
but
sell.
the RFL and the RL commercial don't have that expertise.
Which again,
at all.
I think there's a
company. That's proven.
There's this. Is it IMG in the background? I think.
They're just advisors.
But let's also say you wanted to give a one-off event to an event manager. Let's call them, for the sake of argument, Hearn.
What was his name? Jason?
No, let's call him Hearn.
Dana White. Friend of the president, Dana White. Get him in.
Let's call him Eddie Hearn, just as a made-up name. And you wanted to offer them a product where they could make some money, but it was a new product and an idea whereby they could say, I can see the merit in that. I don't normally get involved in individuals, but if it's two teams, it's England and Ireland, and they're recognisable, I might just take a stake in that if I can get some money out of it. You're never going to do that with Yorkshire Lancashire.
Well, Adam says the reason Yorkshire Lancashire doesn't work is because the rivalries within the counties are far stronger than any rivalry between them. You're Sheffield, Barnsley. Where do people in Sheffield and Barnsley hate? Leeds. People in Wakefield hate Leeds. Leeds versus everyone else. Leeds versus everyone. That'd be great.
Yeah.
We all hate Leeds.
I think that's the thing. You can talk about War of the Roses, but I mean, who knows the exact history from
it's not,
the 1600s? Do you know what I mean?
It's not even Yorkshire.
The reason
Lancashire,
New South Wales,
it's the House of Lancaster.
Yeah,
it's nothing to do with Yorkshire.
The reason New South Wales Queensland works is it was actually built from the 70s and before, when New South Wales took the Queensland players,
and it's also
it was quite bitter.
The whole concept of mate against mate.
Yes.
You could do that with England and Ireland. I know I'm banging on about it, but you could have club mates playing against each other, beating the crap out of each other, because that's what started.
I think if you look at the last World Cup, and New Zealand tore Ireland a new arsehole, and even Lebanon did, with a lot of Sydney A-grade players. I don't think Ireland.
That island.
Yeah, well, that was the best island available.
Yeah, I'm talking about the island in 2000. And
I think those players are a bit old.
Not those exact players.
I don't think Brian Carney's still up to it.
Necessarily. Well,
Barry's pretty fit though. Barry McDermott could do a job.
What's their status at the moment, Ireland? They sort of
they probably exist more than
C or something status or something.
Because there's about 2 clubs.
Not been graded into it.
Yeah, they're not allowed to qualify for the World Cup because they're a mess.
They're not full members.
Yeah.
But how do you get them up to being full members? How do you get opposition that is going to be meaningful over a period? You know, Origin started as one game, the dead rubber of a series.
I mean, to me, the obvious answer for me is England go down under mid-season and play a test match, but
which they did against Samoa a few years ago, didn't they?
I
2016,
went,
I think.
2017, I went.
England
played. I refereed PNG, Cook Islands. I can't remember who they played. England.
Samoa
was it? Yeah. You know,
Campbelltown.
Campbelltown. Yeah, there's just a one-off game.
Venice of Sydney.
I could see that working because from an England point of view, they get everybody in camp and they get that feel.
Exactly.
When you're travelling for a tournament for a World Cup, that's a big part of it. You travel to Australia, which you're going to be doing into the World Cup. For me, I think that's a better thing for England. I can see what you're saying in terms of building up a product and it's kind of taking a longer term view, which Rugby League never does. I mean,
well, we haven't got the gap in the season for us to bugger off to Australia for a couple of weeks. That's the problem.
All the money.
All the money.
Yeah.
But you know, these ideas are all good, but all
Phil's idea is terrible.
But what we've all agreed is it's not Yorkshire Lancashire.
We just need more money. This is like the people saying, well, why did England's women play Wales again when we knew they were going to win by 60, 80, 70 points? Because we can't afford to bring the Gillaroos over, or the Ferns, or whoever.
Well, they're
Well,
playing,
money.
We need to talk about Wales v England, Rich, that you were
but they're
covering.
playing anyway.
I was there. Was I covered? Was I? Well, I was in the stand for the game.
I missed the women's game, but it was competitive.
I was stood next to my nephew because he knows more about rugby league than I do, so I was getting tips off him because I did say to him, she won't score many tries because she won't get many passes, and then Anna Davis scored 5 tries, so he immediately knows I know nothing at all about rugby league now. England are better than Wales. They were better than Wales last year than the year before. We know that because Wales have only France because Wales have only been playing women's rugby league since 2019. And we can't afford to play Australia or New Zealand or the Cook Islands or PNG or anything.
But they are playing Australia in
Vegas.
4 months?
Yeah.
How many months? Yeah.
When neither team will have played 4 months, and the Gillaroos will probably win by 50 or 60 points. But
50 or 60? That's a big call.
But they're quite good, the Australians.
Do you think the gap is 50 or 60 points, not 20 or 30?
I don't know. Now I've said that, I might get people attacking me. I don't know.
It's a big gap.
Shouldn't have said that number, shouldn't I? But
it's a big gap. I mean, they played the Kiwis in the World Cup, didn't they? And that was competitive, wasn't it?
The final was a bit of a write-off, but the group game was, I think it was it 8-0?
It was one of the best games.
Yeah,
didn't they play a game at York? That's the one I got in my mind.
I think that was the...
Yeah, but England were competitive for about 50 minutes against New Zealand in the semi-final.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
But now there's quite a few England players in the
in
the NRLW, and I think there's a lot more depth amongst the England players as well. I think the Women's Super League's improved and is getting better, and obviously players are getting paid, which they weren't before, so standards have increased.
And if more players go over to the NRLW, then
they'll be exposed to a better level. Yeah, definitely.
And maybe one will be going over.
I think it'll be a rude awakening for England women against Australia.
But I think they must be aware of that. It's not as if they're.
But they need that game. The same way that Wales need games against England, France need games against England, men and women. England need games against Australia.
And not just that; it's the experience, isn't it, for the women to travel out to Vegas? It was not many people can say that they've
gamble.
Well, not many people can say they've gone to Vegas to play rugby.
No. I think for the American audience as well, seeing women. Very tough women knock 10 lumps out of each other will be quite a sight.
Can you not mention America, please?
There's not going to be some kind of... are you hoping for some kind of scandal on tour so you can write about it in the chicken wing or something? Because you were talking about
That's an odd and childish thing to say, Rich. How dare you?
We were talking about Great Britain earlier, and their tour down under in the Tri-Nations or whatever it was, they're all well behaved, these England women. They're all professionals.
Is that the ones that you're not trying to get the shorts off?
I wasn't trying to get the shorts off anyway. Don't say things like that. People believe it. Funny off Gemma Carter saying I just hang around their changing rooms all the time. Was there anything else that came out of that game? Not really, because they won 82-0. But it was good because it was on the telly, and if they hadn't have played it, wouldn't have been on the telly, and people wouldn't have seen them.
The one memory I've got of that game is not Anna Davis's 5 tries, the great performance from Izzy Rowe,
who's now a superstar,
on her 18th birthday, which were all admirable. It's the amount of time it took the English players to get off the pitch because all of the kids wanted their autographs, their pictures, their shorts. And that's after they'd won 82-0. None of those kids cared what the score was. It didn't matter.
Yeah,
it was the fact that you could actively see a new generation being drawn into... so many people, when kids were interviewed they did a training day at Weekwood on, was it the Wednesday or the Thursday leading up? And the RFL put out a video, and every kid they interviewed was going, I love Amy Hardcastle. It doesn't matter whether she was good, bad or indifferent in that game. They've got role models. Yeah. That is so important. And the other thing is, if the England... I don't know a lot about women's football, but I know that the England Lionesses are at the top end of it. So if they were playing, let's say, and I don't even know if there is a women's football team in Lithuania, but they were playing them and they beat them 8-0.
Well, they beat San Marino the other year 20-0. So.
Yeah, but if it was something like 8-0, which is the equivalent of what England beat Wales, if you normally equate about 80 is 8 in comparatively. Well, there's a factor you can...
Opta stats over here.
Then nobody would be saying, let's not have women's football anymore because England have beaten Lithuania 8-0. They'd be going, here's another replay of that brilliant goal by... Name an England football player of your choice.
Ella Toon. There you go.
Ella Toon. We'd be lauding it. We wouldn't be pulling the sport down. So I think, again, I got from the end of that game, not that England won 82 and it wasn't competitive. A lot of people in that ground loved what they saw, and would go again the next time it's announced at the.
Good seats at beautiful downtown Bramall Lane to watch the England Lionesses in December. £40. Me and my friends were going to go watching, and we think, oh no, we like the Lionesses, but not 40 quid's worth in December at beautiful downtown Bramall Lane. Whereas how much were tickets on Saturday? 25 quid, something like that.
And you got 2 games.
And half for the kids or whatever. It's I wouldn't say it's cheap, but it's good value rugby league. International rugby league is good value. Now,
what was going on with the stewarding, Rich?
Well, apparently there was I don't know if it was overcrowding in the South Stand, but I was stood waiting to interview people because I'm a conscientious journalist now. There were people upset that they couldn't stand where they wanted to, but I don't know.
Well, there was people standing just next to us the whole game, basically. Some female fans.
It's not doing their jobs, is it? But
yeah, well, I don't know whether they couldn't get to their seats or... Yeah, but it seemed like it happened quite a bit around the stadium.
Which is a concern, isn't it? But good that people don't want to stand on the Western Terrace, do they? That's the problem. They don't want to stand on the Western Terrace at Headingley. They don't want to stand on the South Stand. But if it's full, that's positive. But I mean, that's the RFL. That's what they say. When they deny Magic Weekend dates to you or whatever, do you just email them all the time?
What's up?
Dear the RFL, what is going on? What has happened here? You, John Davidson, were one of the rare few people who spoke to IMG this week.
I did.
Have you learned anything you can tell us? Because Tim asks, what's going on with IMG?
Well, I've written 3 pieces that Tim could read.
Go read Tim's piece.
They're all free. One for Total RL website and 2 for Patreon.
Patreon.com/rugby league long read or whatever.
Yeah, something like that. I think the interesting bit, and I think they wanted to stress this, was that they are advisors. They are not in charge of the sport. And I think a lot of people, a lot of fans, a lot of clubs...
a lot of idiots.
A lot of columnists.
Columnists, journalists, lots of people, blaming them for everything, every ill. But they don't make the decisions. They stress that they make recommendations, and then they try and use their expertise to carry out those recommendations. But not all of their recommendations have been accepted or pushed through. And I think loop fixtures was one that they mentioned. They want to get rid of loop fixtures.
They kind of described, didn't they?
I think that's the understanding. Yeah. So I think they defended what they've done, but I think they were also keen to stress, which we all know, it is a 12-year deal. So.
And they haven't been paid for the first 2 years.
Well, they've been paid $450,000. The first 2 years they were not paid anything.
Yes.
Well, this is what they're claiming. I mean, I haven't had that confirmed by the RFL.
But nobody from the RFL has denied that. Which
no, but I mean they wouldn't really be that proactive. But
I think
But yeah, no, I think you can beat IMG with several sticks over several things. But I think that is the key point: is that who's making the decisions. And why are we not getting the progress, perhaps? Because they're saying they want the progress to be quicker. But there are roadblocks. And one of the roadblocks is something we've already mentioned, which is a lack of money to invest in growth.
I also think that when Roger Jones was interviewed about grading and was then supplementary questions about the role of IMG in grading who weren't there, one of the things he said was, in future, we're going to look for value out of the deal. I think IMG were getting in saying you've actually had value.
Yes, that was their claim.
You haven't paid us anything.
Well, that was another.
You're going to be paying us something.
Yeah. Well, that was an interesting.
Don't bring up value because you've had it virtually for nothing.
Well, there's an interesting point that Matt Dwyer made when he was asked, what have you done? What's your progress? What successes, etc. Obviously, grading was one. The TV deal, the fact that every game is on TV. Every game is being produced by Sky. That's never happened before. Apparently, the ratings have been quite good. Obviously, we haven't seen the ratings, so we can't confirm or deny that. But also, the attendances have held up, which I think a lot of people were worried that every game would be on TV. Attendances have dropped.
Because they live in the 1950s, where
yes, yeah. And then the other point is the digital engagement is apparently up almost 100%, and they have worked with clubs on that. The interesting bit I found was the TV deal, and they said that when they came into negotiations, it was actually going to be lower than what they got. So they worked very hard to improve it to 21, 22 million. That's quite worrying.
More when you add in the cost of production.
Yes, but that's quite worrying when you think where it was. If that is the truth, where it was before.
Because the reality is it comes back to the competitiveness. And if there's nobody really else in the market pay the level of money that Sky pay, then why would Sky pay any more money than what they need to pay? And it's what Ed would do.
But it's also about offering Sky something different, so they might be prepared to pay the same. And the problem is that if IMG or your go-to give us some suggestions about how we look different, this so-called reimagining, and I come back and say, well, one-drop loop fixtures, and the game goes, we're not prepared to do that, then why should Sky pay you more money when all you're going to offer them is what you've always offered them?
I think part of what James said there is key is that the 2014, I think it was a 5 or 6 year deal, which was the 40 million year deal that Nigel Wood got, was when BT Sport came into the market and they gobbled up the rugby union rights. But there were talks, so there was, okay, Sky, you have to give us this or we'll go to BT.
That's right.
There isn't that. The market is very different now, and also you see Sky's losing money. They're paying more for football. They're paying, women's football has a 40 million a year TV deal, which is more than rugby league does. That didn't really exist as a property 10 years ago. So something's got to give. And the other component is rugby league or Super League is not more popular.
No.
It's not, the ratings are not doubled or tripled. There's not 100,000 new participants. The media profile nationally is actually reduced.
Well,
you're not going to give more money, are you?
But one of the things that IMG also proposed in the one big press conference they did when they were announced was they didn't just want to get rid of Magic Weekend. They wanted to actually replace Magic Weekend with a new product.
With a new event,
which was going to be either outside of any
Yorkshire
television deal or was going to be sold to make the package more valuable.
Yeah.
And we never did it.
Yeah.
No, but it's designed by committee, isn't it? Which is the whole problem with rugby league is that because the clubs, comes back to the governance, and the clubs have a say.
But the other problem with that is that you've got 12 different clubs who all have completely different priorities. If the 12 clubs had one view of the game and they went in as a united force to negotiate to say it'll benefit all of us, some of us that'll benefit a little bit more than the other, but that's the way it works.
They're never going to do it,
but they don't, because the perspective of Club A is different to Club.
They're separate businesses in competition
with different
one another.
Shareholders. Who've got different.
I think
priorities.
we need to go to a commission model where you have 5 or 6 seemingly independent figures. Obviously, who they are is up to the debate, but who are not. They're not owners of clubs, and then they make those decisions.
Which is actually what I thought the board of RL Commercial was going to be.
I don't think RL. I mean, we can debate the success of RL Commercial in the 2 years, but in terms of like new sponsors, we've had
ABK.
We have had Egg, which weirdly Egg announced and the rugby league commercial didn't announce for a week. We've had AKB. Yeah. Have we had anything else?
There will be others,
but nothing major.
I think that,
Acme whistles.
It was born out of the clubs, wasn't it? Rugby league commercial trying to grab power from the RFL, and for me it failed.
Oh, you're talking about the Super League split?
Yeah, that's why rugby league commercial came about, really, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit convoluted.
It has an independent board.
Yeah, but I mean,
it became about as the unification of the sport, which I never understood how it could unify it when you still had 3 separate bodies.
It essentially unified because COVID came in and everyone lost money, and they kind of went, well, we can't have 2 governing bodies, which we all predicted was going to happen because it had been tried before, and it is history repeating. Yeah.
Is it IMG's fault that Rochdale Hornets have only sold 40 season tickets? Because some people will blame them for that. This is the statement. You've reposted it from Andy Maisie, John.
No comment, I just reposted
No, that's what I mean. At the time of writing, I can report we have 55 platinum and regular season passes sold and allocated in total so far. This figure includes 15 under 16 passes which are issued free of charge. So that's 40.
I compliment Andy Maisie for his transparency and his
why
honesty.
has he issued that, though?
He's urging... It was essentially a press release, or will be on the club's website, urging people to buy... we need you to come out and buy. This is the situation. Obviously, the statement's a lot longer than that in theory, but yeah, he's trying to be honest, and he's trying to urge.
I get that,
fans.
but then when you then go to your local businesses and say we want some sponsorship, or what's the kickback? Well, we've got 40 members.
Rugby League club owner reveals
That's
terrible
and
figures.
I get that some of it is about digital engagement, because if you put statements like that out, people will log on and.
He should have made it a
read.
video. That's what he should
But
have.
I have the same thing with Castleford. It's saying we've reached 2,000. It's like, it's not the kind of thing I would be putting out.
Well, okay, I've reached 10, haven't they?
8.5.
Yeah.
But
Sorry, 8.
Close.
Yeah.
but they've reached 8.5 because Hull have only reached 6. It's like, I can piss up the wall higher than you can. But if I'd only...
It's up to the language on this programme.
It's the end of the season. If I'm not... if I would be Castleford, I wouldn't be saying in public how many season tickets I've
Especially
sold.
not when Wakefield have sold more, because we're further up the wall than they are.
But I'm just saying it's counterproductive, isn't it? When you can be transparent, but you can actually harm your business if you're overly transparent.
Big fan of Hull and Hull FC and Hull KR fans thinking, Wakefield and Castleford, they're close together, they should merge. As my brother-in-law pointed out, yeah, Hull and Hull KR are in the same city. So, are we having standalone fixtures in Super League next season? Asked Robbie. Robbie Rhino, is he the son of?
Yeah.
Son of Ronnie.
Finally,
So we know where he is. Where's your sister? Where's your mum? Robbie, tell us. It's been a long-held mystery. Are we going to have? We should have.
I doubt.
But we
I would have.
Good Leeds aren't going to give up Friday nights, are they? Because they get all the corporates in.
No, but I think it's more about they might kick off at 7 and the other game kick off at.
That was not a question of IMG, but I would imagine that the clubs will continue to decide. And that was the case this year. I saw a lot of people blaming Sky. It's not Sky's.
Well, the other thing about that is, do you want to get more money out of Sky? Give them the ability to show all 6 games because they're not competing against themselves.
Well, my understanding with Sky is that obviously the clubs wanted to play the games when they want, and Sky was kind of like, well, we're not giving you a lot of money, so okay, you can do that. But I think you want to pick Thursday night rates well. Like, fans don't necessarily like it, but it's a quiet night for sport. It's good content. Yeah, but clubs don't want to play on. They want to play on Friday nights, and yeah.
If you put a video tour of the old toilets at Castleford on Twitter, you get loads of social engagement because people will go, look at these terrible old toilets at Castleford, Wakefield, wherever. So well done to Andy and LG who've been pointing out
I
things
did
about
see a
wheels.
comment though on Twitter when Castleford got on it, and people saying it's something to do with the toilets and the tap's not working or something. So
They've got soap though.
marvellous.
That was only post-COVID.
Post-COVID.
Yeah, I know, but that's improvement.
It's probably not being replenished.
That's
since
evolution.
2020.
That's evolution.
Oh, don't, we're going to upset now. We'll upset Castleford. What else has been going on social media? So, we should say congratulations to the Wheelaroos on winning their series against the Wheel Kiwis 2-0.
The Wheel Kiwis.
It's not a great name, is it?
Couldn't they be the Wheel Blacks?
Well, it's probably because Rugby Union that sue them.
No, because there's the Tall Blacks and then there's the All Whites
and the badminton team.
What are they?
Well, they were the Blackhawks, and then someone changed it. No, that's real. That's genuine.
But
I've not made that up.
The Tall Blacks are the New Zealand basketball team,
yeah.
and the All Whites are the the soccer team. I can't remember what the cricketers are.
Cricketers.
Yeah.
They don't have fun.
As ballers.
Yeah, it's rubbish cricket now. We don't like it anymore.
Yes,
So
but that's important.
Wheelchair
again,
Hacker.
for Southern Hemisphere. Wheelchair Hacker, unbelievable. But the fact that now, not only did they play each other, New Zealand got better in the second test, and there was a joint coaching session.
The Aussie fella with the mullet should have wheeled up to one of them and gone head to head. That's what we needed to do to get some social media.
I think the other thing about that is it was treated with real reverence because Glenn Lama was the commentator who was the running... He commentated on New Zealand Samoa. There was replays...
New Zealand Tonga.
New Zealand Tonga. There were replays. They interviewed coaches before and after. The New Zealanders were saying, this is the start of something. We've already had interest from other Pacific nations that want to play wheelchair rugby league. So I think, forget any result, it's massive.
It's still entertaining. Somehow, even when it's a 100-point difference, it's still entertaining.
Well, we all wanted New Zealand to score in the first test.
And they did. Later on,
Did we Phil?
Yeah.
Well,
Is that the royal we?
No, the more you watched it, the more you wanted their effort to be rewarded with.
King Charles is our king, is your king, is their king.
And when they did score, the joy of them scoring 4 points was greater than Australia scoring 98.
I mean, Paul has asked us, what will the appointment of Donald Trump mean for rugby league? Not a lot, really. Nothing. Nothing. He don't like rugby league. He don't like anything. He was a failed American football team owner.
Could mean more dead people in Samoa from measles, but
I don't think he'll be in Vegas for the big extravaganza.
Not sure Conor McGregor will be there either. Andy says
might be.
What are you going to do? Now that MPs are being contacted about the RFL tribunal decision about Mark Aston, we think the sport takes concussion seriously enough? Well, the sport as a governing body certainly do, because they've brought in all these things to try and mitigate the risks and stuff. But what's going on with Sheffield, John? What is the latest? And I know you've posted it for free on Patreon. So
well, I think the latest is the apparently the deadline for Mark Aston's appeal with the RFL has been extended. Tuesday. I think he's
in Las Vegas.
Oh yes, the Eagles posted a picture of him, didn't they? Which was interesting that they did that, because
I don't know about that. He's not replied to any of my calls.
He's in Las Vegas.
I think the group or the support group that are pushing for reform are contacting MPs.
Right.
They've contacted a lot. Lindsay Hoyle. I think they're reaching out to a lot.
Did you have a word with him on Monday? You could have mentioned it to him. We'll come back to that in a minute.
Some Super League owners. So I think they're not only trying to create more pressure on the RFL, but also for MPs to ask questions about rugby league governance in the next parliamentary session, which is on the 28th of November, I think. That date could be wrong, but it's towards the end of November. So, I think the case is very interesting. Obviously, between the last podcast we did, when I was probably quite harsh, I had read the tribunal notes, but speaking to a lot of people about it, I think there's a lot that's gone on here that kind of is not a good look. It's very questionable. The tribunal, the way it was run, the findings, the whole process. I think of how the RFL, how the semi-professional part-time game deals with concussions leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, my understanding is that the doctor or doctor equivalent, so they're not all doctors, not necessarily actually even seeing all players they're signing off. Some of them have been signed off on the phone. Not ideal. I think it raises a lot of questions. I mean, I've written about the governance rugby league for years, so it doesn't really surprise me.
They still let you in.
Just about. Yeah, maybe not next year, but So I think the information is out there if people want to read it, if they want to sign the petition. I think it's I think what Sheffield and Mark Aston did was wrong, and I believe they deserve to be punished. I'm not saying that, but I think 18 months for something that was a paperwork error was not necessarily a willful conspiracy to play someone who had not been passed medically fit to play. I think there's a big difference there, and I think 18 months. I think the equivalent is when you look at Ben Flower. He got 6 months for 2 punches to Lance Higher's head, is what Mark Aston did 3 times worse. I mean, you can make up your own mind.
Well, what if he did it on the street would be a criminal act, wouldn't it? And the other one isn't. But
I think that there is.
I guess we have to wait for the appeal, and if there is an appeal, and see what.
Well, whether the appeal goes to, I think it's Sports Resolutions, which is obviously an independent body.
Does this end up going to go to was it the
Court of
Central
Arbitration
for Sport? Yeah.
Switzerland. I'd love a trip to Switzerland. No. I think the claim that some people are making is that he's been made a scapegoat for the concussion crisis.
Is that hyperbole though?
Well, yeah, you could argue it is, or you could argue that it's true. I mean, is what he did worth an 18-month ban? Yeah.
What's the precedent?
That's a very good question. Yeah, is there a precedent?
Or are you setting a precedent?
I'm not setting anything.
No,
I'm just reporting on it.
Is the punishment that has so far been meted out prior to appeal, is that setting the precedent?
I think you would agree, Phil. I'm not trying to speak for you, but you can disagree once I'm finished. But you would probably agree that the whole concussion, the RFL is, for lack of a better word, shitting itself over the concussion case.
Understandably.
Understandably, their insurance premiums have gone up. They have to be
seen to be.
I was going to say they not only have to do things, they have to be seen to be doing things. So I think
that might be why it's 18 months. And I'm not saying that's
is
right
that fair
or wrong.
though? Is that fair? Yeah.
How do you test whether it's fair or not?
Well, how does one
Until initially there is a sentence and then it's appealed.
If you're a player who he's found guilty of taking cocaine, why does one player get 2 years, one player gets 18 months, one player gets 1 year? As was pointed out by the player who got 2 years when others were getting 1 year.
Let's see if there's an appeal, and then I think we can take a
I think
more
there's
rounded view.
I think there's a lot of questions
Yeah.
that still haven't been answered, and I think having that appeal heard by an independent body
That's
and
what
not
it
by
needs.
the RFL would be, in my opinion anyway, the best way to go.
The only thing, if I was advising Mark Aston, I'd be save it all for your appeal. Try not to do it all in the public arena at the moment.
I don't think he is. He's not directing anything.
That's what I'm saying. If I was advising him,
which you're not.
Which I'm not. Clearly, we're not on this podcast.
And I've not read any of these notes, by the way, but I think, from an RFL point of view, they would probably actually welcome, I would imagine, in some ways, an appeal.
Yeah.
And letting an independent body make a decision.
Yeah, that's setting
because in some ways, it almost absolves them because they've made a decision.
But what happens if they don't get the finding or the result that they want? I think it's a little bit like the Bradford Odsal case. A lot of people called for an independent review. They always said there wasn't a need for one. Obviously, it didn't happen, but I think a lot of people would say there still should be. But yeah, I think generally in well, at least in my experience in organisations or companies, they don't necessarily want their laundry aired to someone else.
No, I'm sure they wouldn't. But I suppose the decision is out of their hands then, isn't it? So if they end up sort of saying actually not guilty, or they say yes guilty, but it should be a 12-month ban or a 6-month ban, then they can't then be accused of being soft on concussion, can they?
True.
And I think the other thing, it gives them that benchmark in case it ever does happen again.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Phil. There isn't a precedent for this case. Like it's arguably a new area, so we don't necessarily know what is a sufficient ban. But I think if you look at, and I don't know Mark Aston very well at all.
Well, it's also what you take into account, because in most court cases, the accused can give mitigation, can't they?
Well, he wasn't allowed to call witnesses.
No, so on or around the sentencing, you just say, well, normally this would carry a 3-year ban or whatever, but because of your record in the sport, because of everything that you've done, because that you're clean, then it'll be a year.
And he has
2 years suspended.
And he has done a lot for the sport over his career as a player.
But that's irrelevant, really. That's to me, that's not relevant to the case.
But that's how justice. Do you know what I mean? If you go, in front of a judge, your character and your past record is when it comes to sentencing.
When it comes to sentencing, yes. But whether you're guilty or
I agree. I agree. Sorry, I agree with you, James. Yeah. I think down to the sentencing, yes, you are either guilty or not guilty. But the sentence of the
Does the sentence fit the criminal?
And I don't think 18 months. I think that is too harsh.
But I think that's where it needs testing on appeal.
I was going to say something glib, but it's not worth it. Has anything else happened?
The world's ending.
The world is ending. Thanks. Welcome to the last episode of the
Phil's
podcast.
very happy about the result.
So I'm
of the
getting
election.
on the swear word. I listened to the preview of the Cherrington sisters are starting a podcast because the world needs more podcasts.
Cherrington sisters.
They play in the NRLW.
All right.
They're tragic, aren't they?
They're great.
Yeah, and they swear on their podcast. They say the bad words on their podcast. Well, bad
What,
words.
the C word?
No,
They're
because
Aussies. Doesn't matter, does it?
No,
That's how we talk.
Yeah. The F word they say on their preview for their podcast. Can you imagine if any players did that?
What, fennel?
I know. It was bad enough when what was he called? Oliver Holmes and Jai Hitchcock did their podcast. They got in trouble at CAS for that, but I don't think they even swore on that one.
Could have been good IMG points though.
Bring that back.
Engagement.
That's what the whole FC should do. Bring back a podcast with Ollie Holmes. He's there now. I don't know who else.
Who's the guy who joined Cam Scott? He could do a whole episode.
Everyone do podcasts.
The toxic podcast.
Everyone do podcasts. Why don't clubs have podcasts? Why haven't they all got podcasts? They get IMG points. Leeds have got about 3 podcasts going. That's it. Is that it?
I think there was a question about Brodie Croft.
Oh yes, Brodie. Are you excited, Brodie Croft?
Why would I?
Because you're Leeds.
Because you're Leeds, yeah.
Lord.
You had lunch with Gary Etherington today.
Did I?
Yeah, apparently, I don't know.
No. I was here.
Was it the owners' meeting?
He's in Barbados.
So I wasn't at the honours meeting then today.
Is there a new club in
the
joining the RFL?
I don't know. I think a piece has been written. I think was it in the Telegraph in Australia that
Quite probably.
now that Ben Hunter's been
Left or sacked from the St George
pushed
Warrior
out
Dragons.
from St George, they need a halfback.
Yes.
They're looking at who's available on the market, who would they like, who do they think could run their team. They've identified the fact that Bevan French and Brodie Croft could be. So the story was then run, Brodie Croft's their first choice. They've spoken supposedly to his agent, who funnily enough is the same agent that Brad Arthur's got.
Funny, I know, the All Brothers, they've got a lot of clients.
And obviously Brad Arthur's trying to build a team at Leeds around people like Brodie Croft. So they've said, oh yeah, he's keen to go back to the NRL. You'd think at some point he would be keen to go back to the NRL.
He's from Australia. His wife's from Australia.
But Leeds are saying November the 1st passed. That's when the clause could have been activated for him to go back to the NRL. So it won't be for 2025. That's all I know. But that's without speaking to any of the parties concerned.
Did they anoint you Lord Captain of Headingley on Monday? Is that the word when you were down at...
I didn't know you had Asian heritage, Phil.
I was an invitee. You didn't have to
You
have Asian heritage.
Might want to tell the listeners where you were.
I might have Asian heritage. I don't know.
Dutch heritage.
Definitely Dutch. Dutch Asian. The British Amateur Rugby League Association is 20 years old, which is a fine achievement. So they had their inaugural awards, and they
British Asian Rugby League.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said amateur.
Well, I might
British
have said
Asian.
amateur. I meant Asian.
British Asian
You
Rugby
did
League.
say amateur.
Okay, I'm just checking.
Very tired.
Don't upset Barla.
Yeah.
Don't upset them.
So Bara,
Yeah.
not
No,
Bala,
yeah.
are 20 years old,
Right.
and they had their inaugural awards, and also initiated 7 people into their first ever Hall of Fame. And they wrote to Ikram Butt, who is obviously the
Dr. Ikram. Yeah.
Doctor, who is the driving force behind it, wrote to Sir Lindsay Hoyle and said, is there any chance you might want to host this? And he said, yes, you can have the speakers' rooms at the House of Commons. He introduced it, and then he had to go off actually into the chamber.
Do some speaking. Yeah. Speakering.
But it was, for Rugby League again to be represented in the House of Commons was fantastic.
So are you in the Hall of Fame?
No, I was a visitor. I went for
Sorry, I missed that bit.
I went for the
It's been a long
canapes.
day. All right.
They're good, aren't they?
I think it was lovely.
Yeah.
And for
Oh, look at this. Oh, look at this. Yeah.
They're all on the
Have
table.
you had them, John?
No.
and to write
I don't get invited anywhere.
to write a piece for a magazine that goes to print at the weekend. So you've
Which
been
magazine's that?
I can't imagine.
Well, I'm not
So have you been to the Speaker's house?
Oh, yes.
It's funny. It's a wonderful place.
Marvellous. I did ask him about whether I could sell it, but yeah.
You'll get a good price, couldn't you?
1859 apparently it was built.
Marvellous.
So it was a wonderful.
So who was in the
evening.
Hall of Fame? Who was...
There were 12 there were community-based people. It was across rugby league and rugby union. So there was there were speeches from Tony Sutton was there, gave a speech. Phil Davis from rugby union gave a speech. I think there were 5 speeches in all. But the interesting award winner for me was a 16-year-old player who's playing at Wigan at the moment called Hamza Butt.
Okay.
And Chris Radlinski was there to present him with the outstanding award. Bradford and Huddersfield got awards for what they do for their Asian fans, iftars and all, making it an accessible and friendly place. But it was just that rugby was elevated on Monday night, just to be in the Houses of Parliament. The only odd thing was it was November the 4th. And why you would invite northern people to be in the Houses of Parliament on the evening of November the 4th, I've no idea.
Good thing you're not Catholic, Phil.
They did make sure that we gave our visitor badges back.
I tell you, it was interesting to listen to that story, because I feel like I should have probably known that as a member of the RFL's inclusion board. But
Ben Aberstein.
that's the first time I've known about it.
I must admit, I didn't know that association existed. Well, until you told me the other day.
The good thing about, clearly, it's an area of the game that we can extol in terms of diversity. But Ikram has for too long, and by his own admission, been the one player who's been of South Asian heritage, who broke the glass ceiling and played for England. It's a wonderful thing. but it's 30 years ago nearly, 1995.
It's like praising Great Britain for having Clive Sullivan as the captain.
If Hamza Butt, who is 16 and has moved from the scholarship to the academy, is a big lad.
I would say on that though. I think if you're going to talk, Afro-Caribbean immigrants or people of that heritage have been well represented. Look at Junior and Semba.
Yeah.
Many others, but yeah. In terms of the Asian side, you would say that's really something that we'll work on.
An event that we should be proud of. We should do more to tell people about. At community level, at Halifax School, got an award for it's puts kids into tag competitions and it's very successful. And the head teacher, who collected the award, was at pains to point out to all the South Asian parents that the message needed to go back that they should play contact sport, that it's good for them, and even though culturally their initial reaction may be to withdraw from it, he would encourage. He thinks it's important as like playing an instrument or whatever it might. Yeah. And again, things like that to get that message out.
Yeah, definitely.
Really important. So it was worth going for the canapes, which included things like onion barges, which was marvellous. I don't know if you had that one.
I don't know.
Was great, but more importantly, it's significant for the sport, I think.
I do miss working in a bed factory in Batley, not for the wages, but for the post-Ramadan feasts. They were superb. Do we just need to write a letter to the speaker then and see if we can do the podcast at the House of Lords?
Absolutely.
I mean,
we put him in the 4020 Hall of Fame.
We just invent.
We just make one up. Yeah.
For the next for our next tour, because they've just the Rugby Union podcast with the people on. They've just sold their podcast because they've done a tour and everything. So we could probably sell 4020 Live for at least 50 pence, 60 pence, some walnut whips. So if you want to buy us, definitely up for sale.
Well, we've got a link in now to the leader of the all-party parliamentary group, so maybe he'll invite us
that's
down
true.
to do the podcast.
Yeah. So if you want to,
Mr. Baines,
we'll do that. We'll see you in Parliament, but again, not with any fireworks or gunpowder. My grandma, who again knows far more or knew far more about rugby league than I, on our first trip to London when I was about 6 or 7 or something, we went on a tour around the Houses of Parliament, and her hair lacquer can set off the metal detectors going into the thing, and that's a thing from nearly 40 years ago now that I'll never forget because it was hilarious. Probably not as much to you as it is to me, but it means something to me. So I'm the one in charge of the podcast. Is that it? Are we finished? We're not. It's not the end of season review yet. We'll do that in the future. No. But I think that's it. I think that is everything. James, you still selling houses? Is it still going well? Is this your full-time thing now? Is this?
Yeah, Thursday was my last day working in my job, which I'd sort of reduced down to part-time, and we have agreed 6 sales in the last 3.5 weeks. Our first 6 sales. They're like buses. In fact, I agreed one.
Not in West Yorkshire, they're not.
Off market before it even came to market. So no, it's really well. Despite what people think, there is activity in the market.
Phil, the magazine's out next week. I've got to finish my piece.
You need to finish.
I know, but it's got at least one good line in there. John, what are you working
on?
Or just
a couple of. Well, they can do that if they like.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a couple of investigations in the works at the moment. So yeah, should be some interesting things coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Podcast back next week, not on Monday, because Phil's away again. Were you at European Parliament next week? Or you might be invited to the inauguration.
Capitol Hill. Yeah. Big Trump fan.
Up to storm Capitol Hill. Thanks for listening. We'll be back soon. Here's Ronnie the Rhino to say goodbye. He's here. Bye, Ronnie. Bye, everybody.